Hi.
Hi, we're live, Henry.
Hello, Jody.
I have been reading about you, and I feel like you're absolutely the most famous person that I've ever met in my entire life.
Oh, come on.
I mean, it's just when I was looking at all the people that you have photographed through the years, I truly couldn't believe all the people that I saw. I mean, I knew you for the Monkees and Crosby, Stills and Nash and stuff, but I had no idea what you've done in your career. So you said I could ask you anything.
Sure.
And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you anything.
Okay.
The first thing I want to show you, and I've told you this story before, but when I was a kid, I went to a convention, and this was my first autograph. I don't know if you could see that, but my first autograph was you. Wait a minute.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
It's
there
a good dude, Henry
that.
Diltz.
Let me see that picture. What is that picture? Oh, okay. Wow.
And so back in 1986, and I guess I was a kid. I was probably 12. And you were the first person I ever asked for an autograph from in my entire life at the Monkees convention in New Jersey.
Wow. That's sweet.
You were standing with Maggie McManus. And I mean, I didn't know photographers could be famous, you know, and so I've had that since 1986.
Wow.
That's how long I know your name for. Wow. But I want to ask you, how exactly, because I've been reading so much about you, how did you get to be the photographer for the Monkees?
Well, you know, so in '66, on the road with my folk group, the Modern Folk Quartet, we all bought little secondhand cameras one day, kind of spontaneously, for no reason, in a little secondhand store. And I started photographing my friends. When I got back to Laurel Canyon, I was photographing, you know, people that I knew, which were all musicians, really. I mean, it was Mama Cass and David Crosby and Stephen Stills and the Turtles, and so many of my neighbors were musicians. I'm trying to center myself here.
You're perfect.
Yes. And so, you know, I started doing publicity photos for people, and I guess my name was getting out there. But I got a call one day in '67, about a year after I started shooting, and it was Ralph Benner, the editor for Tiger Beat. And he said, "We'd like to hire you for the day to go down to the Monkees set where they're, you know, recording their television program, and you shoot pictures all day and, you know, give us the film and we'll pay you for it." Sounded like a good deal to me. And I had seen Mike Nesmith at the Troubadour, but I didn't really know those guys. But I met them all the first day, you know, because I was roughly their age, a couple of years older, but I had kind of, you know, long hair and, you know, love beads, that kind of thing. I was a hippie like they were, and a musician. So it was real easy to hang out with them and fit in. It wasn't awkward at all. It felt like, you know, just normal to hang out. I mean, on the set, they're filming some of the time, but about 2/3 of the time, it's between filming while they're setting up the lights, planning the next shoot and stuff. So there's a lot of downtime. So it end up going into, you know, Mickey's dressing room or Davy's dressing room or hanging out somewhere, getting a coffee. So there's a lot of time to just kind of schmooze and talk and tell stories. And so I got to know them all really well right away. And that lasted for a year and a half. And then I went on the summer tour with them.
So was that your first paying gig?
No, well, let me think. You know, almost. I mean, I'd had a couple of magazine photos in the magazines, and I'd gotten paid for like one picture. I had a picture of the Buffalo Springfield in Teen Set magazine, and they paid me $100. But it was the first regular daily thing. You know, they paid me $300 a day. And
that was a lot of money back then, wasn't it?
It was a lot of money, and I wasn't
married. Kind of a lot of money now, actually.
Yeah, I bought a lot of great shirts and stuff. You know, I improved my wardrobe. But yeah, $300 a day, and it was, you know, 3-4 days a week for the whole year of filming, and then the whole summer tour.
So you were a kid in the 60s making $1,000 a week.
I guess. Well, I wasn't a kid. I was close to 30 by that time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Late
wow.
20. Yeah.
So because your pictures, I mean, I know that they're all over my office wall, and they're all over so many people's walls. Mm-hmm. How, when you sold an image back then, let's say there's a very famous picture that you took during the Head movie, and it's Nicholson and the guys in the dressing room.
Right.
When you turn the photos over to whomever, do you lose the rights to those photos at that point? Like, you got paid, and whatever they do with it, that's the end of it. Sort of like the Wrecking Crew guys.
What do you mean, the Wrecking Crew?
As far as you play on a record, and
they pay you
for the day, and if it becomes Hey Jude, you still got your money for the day, and that's the end of it.
It's pretty much that way. And I didn't spend much of my life working for magazines. It was only that early on thing, you know. And like when it came to the summer tour, I don't know if there was a magazine paying me. I was kind of freelance and selling the pictures to different magazines instead of being hired for the whole thing. You know, I was kind of freelance at that point. But yeah, that whole first year, all the pictures I took went to Tiger Beat offices, law firm publishing, and they kept all those. You know, I had, like, when I worked on Head, I kept that film. The summer tour film I kept, so I got to hold on to a lot of stuff, but not those daily photos when they were filming. You know what they wanted. I knew what they wanted. They wanted magazine covers and the posters, you know, that teeny boppers could put on their wall. So they wanted smiling shots of Davy and shots, you know, all four of them, but they wanted really nice headshots that they could use on the backs of the magazines, like, you know, like this.
Wait a second. So you shot at the Rainbow Room?
The Rainbow Room. This was in Chicago. It was a set. It wasn't a Rainbow Room. They had
but they call it the Rainbow.
Right. It was a recording studio, and you know, and they put up a backdrop. I was in the middle of the 68, right, Gary? 67. A 67 summer tour, and we stopped in Chicago, and we spent about a week there, and they had to record a couple of songs to go on their show, and so they did it right there while they were, you know, in Chicago. Like, here's one. Whoops, that's a different day. You know, it's funny, the picture is backwards. I'm trying to look at you, but when I look at you,
it's coming across correctly to me, though.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
Am I looking right at you now?
You're looking at me.
Because when I see myself, I'm looking way off, you know, in the distance. Okay.
You'll get used to it. See, this is why I told you need to start recording for your own YouTube channel. The stories that you must have must blow a human being's mind.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I have to get into a reminiscing mood, you know, and really think about all the, because I went on a lot of tours and I did a
that
lot.
Picture behind you, that's you? You did that?
Yeah. Yeah. This is them. Back up. Yeah, it was an afternoon, you know, in Chicago, in a sound stage where they painted that, and those guys. I mean, we had a great time. There's a lot of funny jokes and laughter and, you know, stuff going on. You know, I mean, musicians are that way, and especially the Monkees are that way. Of course, you know, it's always very lighthearted. A lot of laughing and stuff. Give me some more magazines. I'll show you a couple more.
Yeah, please.
See, here's one. Oops, how do I?
Oh my God. Okay.
And so, you know, I would sit on the set. Of course, the photographer had to be unseen. If the camera ever got you in a shot, you would be kicked out, you know. So I would hide among the lighting stands. Look, you know, sort of next to the camera. So that they never show the lighting stand. So I was safe. And then I would just trail my telephoto on the, like, you know, I'm just sitting there with the telephoto lens and he's filming, he's doing his thing. And I just click off the, you know, the pictures when they don't even know it. I mean, none of these are posed. he's probably standing there talking to somebody on the set, or he's being filmed. I mean, this is in the middle of being filmed. Where's that one with Davy's beads?
I can't believe, like, every picture I have is you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're so funny. Yeah, where's that one of Davy's love beads? That's a funny one.
Oh my! So you were on the set of those shows, because I can see all the props that I recognize.
Yeah, they're making a face at me here because I was between shots, and I jumped in there to take that. There's a picture of Davy with these love beads. One day, here it is. One day, I mentioned love beads. In the 60s, we made and wore these love beads. Let me get back up. There it is.
I see it.
You see those?
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Well, I made those beads for me. I made a set of beads. I thought, I'm a Virgo, kind of cool, analytical. I mean, blue, light blue felt good to me, light blue and white. And at the end of the string of beads, I had one red bead. And I wore them down. I made them up in Laurel Canyon one night, just thinking, well, I'm going to make something special for me. Because sometimes the little girls would make them just rainbow. They'd put any color, just a whole, a hodgepodge, rainbow of colors. So I made mine very distinctly for me. And Davy said, hey, man, could you make some of those for me? And I said, yeah, sure. I made him some the next night. And then the next day, the cameraman said, Henry, could you make me some beads like you made for Davy? I made him some. Pretty soon, a bunch of people were wearing them on the set. And then when the girls from Tiger Beat and 16 magazine and Fave magazine, they'd come down to the set. Very often they'd be there for a couple of hours, just interviewing the Monkees in between scenes and writing stories about it for the magazines. The magazines ran on that stuff. And they saw all these people wearing these beads. So they started selling Monkee love beads, blue and white, was 5 or 7, was it, Gary? 7. 7 white, 7 blue, 7 white, 7 blue, all the way around. And then one little red bead at the back. So my own love beads became the Monkee love beads.
But the kid didn't know about the red one.
Yeah, nobody knew about the red one. No, that was only on mine. And something else funny happened. Gloria Stavers was a editor for 16 magazine. And apparently she was one of Jim Morrison's girlfriends, many girlfriends, And she came up to me on the set one day and she said, Henry, would you make a special pair of beads for a friend of mine? He's earthy and he's got a little spiritual side and a dark side. And that's all she said. And I thought, well, okay. And I was into making love beads, and I made a pattern of green and brown for earth, trees and dirt, right? And then I put a little bit of white and a little one black in the middle of, each. And I made it looked like a little rattlesnake kind of. It was a great little pattern all the way around. And I gave them to her. I never knew who they were for, but about a year later, I saw those pictures of Jim Morrison with his shirt off and those my love beads that I made for him.
I can't believe that your claim to fame, other than photography, is making necklaces. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I've got a couple of boxes full of beads. I keep wanting to do it, but I never find the time to do it. I have a bunch of friends who want me to make them a special pair of love beads,
I think you need an agent for the love bead sale. That's so I want to ask you, because I started reading so much about you, which first of all, you were a banjo player, but you were on a Monkees song, weren't you?
I did play the banjo on one song, D.W. Washburn. Yeah, the thing that was kind of neat was when they started producing their own records, at first they were like machine produced. I mean, and they had other people playing and whatnot, other musicians playing. And of course, they had a little revolt where they wanted to play their own music because they could play. And so finally they did get permission to record their own stuff by themselves. So they needed a producer, and they picked a guy named Chip Douglas, who was a guy that I sang with for 5 years in the Modern Folk Quartet.
He was the lead singer of that?
No, not lead singer. No, he was the producer.
Oh.
The albums from Headquarters on.
Right. No, I mean for your quartet, he was
one of the singers. We all sang. We were 4-part harmony, so we all sang. But he was one of my very best friends. I met him in Hawaii in the early 60s. So with him being the producer, he'd say, "Yeah, come on down and come and hang out." And I'd come down and take photos, of course. And then Chip would say, "Hey, they need a tambourine on this part. Grab a tambourine, Henry, and run in there and do that." Gary, why don't you just? Yeah. Phone's ringing. Gary's very busy here. Bustling all around. Yes.
Gary is an awesome side to you. Where there's you, there's Gary, and vice versa.
Well, he's my studio manager, and he's my my archivist. Gary, by nature, likes to archive things, and he likes to scan photos and collect that kind of stuff and organize it. So
it's amazing what you have. I've watched so many professional pieces with you from CNN and from CBS. You've been on nationally known programs. When I was looking at what you've done, of your photo, it says that you've photographed over 200 album covers.
Right.
I saw today and I never realized that the debut album for Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Yes.
That the key was that they were reversed.
Right.
So they weren't Crosby, Stills and Nash. It was Nash, Crosby, and Stills. Is that right?
Stills and Crosby. Yeah, it was backwards.
It was backwards.
The thing was, they hadn't named themselves yet. On the day we took that picture, they didn't have a name. They were halfway through their album. They were still, like Stephen thought he wanted it to be Stills, Nash, and Crosby. His name first. Actually, Stephen was the guy who wrote most of the songs and played almost all the instruments. He was kind of a one-man guy. The other two guys sang harmony and wrote a few songs, but Stephen was really the guy, and so why not call it Stills, Nash, and Crosby or something like that? But they were, I guess, talking to the record company and trying to figure it out. We took the photo. A couple days later, we got it back from processing and had a slideshow and looked at it. And in those couple days, they finally decided Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And so we looked at that picture, said, "Wow, that'd make a great album cover, but we're backwards." And so we thought, well, maybe we'll flip it over, but then Stephen would be playing the guitar the wrong way. And so I just thought, well, that's simple. Let's just go back. The houses, they're just, jump on the couch in the right order. It'll take me 5 minutes. And so we all got in the car and went back, and there was no house anymore. It was gone. It had been bulldozed, back. I guess it was an empty house when we took the picture. It was all boarded up. And there it was. It's a parking lot now.
When you were, I've asked Mickey this before because when I look at pictures of Laurel Canyon that Mickey was taking with his camera back then, and I would say, why are you shooting a picture of a French fry when Eric Clapton is sitting next to you? And he goes, because it was Eric Clapton. Like he wasn't famous, Eric Clapton. He was just another neighbor. And I'm just wondering with you, because you grew up with so many of these people as friends, did you inherit them as friends? Were any of them famous, super famous?
Well, yeah. Okay, look, so in the middle 60s, I came to LA, I think late 62 with the Modern Folk Quartet. We came from Hawaii. So we played at the Troubadour the first night, and we got a record company. And we met tons of people. Then I moved right up to Laurel Canyon, where all the musicians lived. So within a couple years, I knew everybody. The music scene in LA was like a club. We all knew each other. There wasn't sort of rap and heavy metal and country. There was just music. Top 40 music, and the Beach Boys and. Well, when So I knew all these people as fellow folk singers. Like when I was playing in New York in my folk group, Stephen Stills, as a young guy, 19, I think, he was playing in a little coffee house, and he would come down to the jazz club we were singing in and stand next to the stage to listen to our harmonies, because we had 4-part harmony. So I met him. I met David Crosby on the road as a fellow musician somewhere. And so I was kind of part of the club, you know? So
I forgot
the question.
It's okay. Now I read that Harrison Ford had commented about you, and you had said he was a carpenter when I met him.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, these people were just people. They weren't the elite that they became.
I mean, everybody was sort of in their 20s, you know, trying to figure out, starting out on their life's path, right? So many of, I mean, virtually all of my friends were musicians who played in clubs and were starting to record, and just like I was. And what I say is I started photographing all my friends, and one by one, they became famous. That was my lucky break, you know. Their lucky break was my lucky break, because I'd already been photographing them before they had like a hit record. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Which is there anybody that you were really not surprised with the fame that they encountered?
Well, you know, the Mamas and Papas were kind of the first group out of Laurel Canyon that really had hits, like Monday, and, you know, California Dreamin', and wow, they were, you know, and they were folk singers. I mean, really, John Phillips sang folk songs, wrote folk songs. So they were really great. They had a great studio sound and great writing and great producing. So they got very famous right away. I mean, I watched the Buffalo Springfield get together and play in local clubs and finally get a song on the radio. I watched the Byrds. I remember in the Troubadour one night, David Crosby and Roger McGuinn said, "Hey, Henry, meet our friend Gene Clark. He just came from Missouri." And they said, "We're going to form a group. We're going to call it the Beef Eaters." Because, you know, they loved the Beatles. This was like 64. Everyone wanted to be like the Beatles. All the folk groups went out and electrified their instruments after the Beatles played Ed Sullivan, because they said, wow, we need a drummer, you know, we need an electric bass, we need electric guitars. So the Beatles kind of changed the sound of pop music at that point. And then, so all these folk singers became folk rocks, you know, groups. Like, so when the Buffalo Springfield got together and the Byrds got together, that was all kind of folk groups that were now trying to do this new sort of pop music and write their own songs. That was also a new thing. You don't write folk songs. They're 100-year-old songs, right? That sailors and cowboys and miners sang, people in the mountains, and you find these old songs and do your own arrangement of it. That's what folk music was. And then after the Beatles played Ed Sullivan and wrote their own songs, and all of the folk groups said, "Wow, look at that!" I mean,
do you remember where you were when did you see the original Ed Sullivan when the Beatles were on? Where were you?
I was on the road. We were driving up through New England, somewhere, maybe Massachusetts, in a rented station wagon, going to a college to do a concert. And that night we had off, and we pulled in early and got a motel room so we'd have a TV to watch them, like at 8 o'clock on Ed Sullivan. And I've heard about the Beatles, but I'd never actually listened to a whole Beatles song. I didn't quite know. I knew they were this exciting group from England. And when we saw them, you know, like shaking their head, "She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah." Oh, we just said, wow. Because we were in the entertainment business, you know. We said, now that is really cool. Why don't we sound a little bit more like that, you know, instead of singing about the ox driver? Let's, you know, something a little more accessible, maybe. So we went out. We had a stand-up bass. Chip Douglas played the stand-up bass. We traded that right in a week later on an electric bass. All right, Gary is busy. And then we became a folk rock group, you know, and had a drummer. God, it was great time.
Were you ever I know that you had your own business being the photographer for music, but did you ever have a moment where you really wished that it was your band that got discovered and you were on the other side of the lens?
No, not really, not really. It's funny. Gary and I were talking the other day. We actually were booked on the Ed Sullivan show
Oh my
in
God.
64. Was it 64?
1 week before.
A week before the Beatles, I guess. Well, but at any rate, one guy in the group had a prophetic dream that New York was going to sink into the sea. There was going to be a huge cataclysmic earthquake, and New York was going to sink into the sea. It was somebody's psychic father had that dream, and we kind of said, well, let's get out of here, let's move to California. And we left New York like a few days before we were supposed to play on the Ed Sullivan show, and we never played there. But the thing is, we would have played on there. We would have been a bunch of, folk singers doing a pretty song and harmony, and we'd have been, forgotten about, or a one-hit wonder or something. I really don't care. I mean, wherever life takes you. No, I've never thought, oh gosh, I wish it was us, that had a hit song. But,
did the psychic father get officially fired from his career of being a psychic?
I don't know. I never traced it back.
That's very, it's, what I think is pretty amazing is a couple times I've been asked why the Monkees, why I'm a fan. When I had actually was explaining to Nez one time when he asked, why would somebody want to meet me? And I was explaining to him that somebody like myself grew up in a bedroom where I had it covered with photos, and they were all photos of the Monkees. And every photo was a positive image. They never put in teen magazines pictures of them picking their noses or crying. It was always smiles. And whenever you had a bad day, you got to look at these photos that someone else took, but the faces that you're looking at make you feel something. And the fact that you actually have been in so many people's houses and made them feel from your eye makes you a legend. It makes it.
Well, it's a nice accident, it's an accidental thing. I mean, the universe figures out some of these things, like leaving New York a few days before the Ed Sullivan show and never doing it. I mean, it's the universe, or it's angels or spirit guides, or it's your life path, Maybe your spirit guide says, look at these guys are supposed to do something else, not play the Ed Sullivan show. So we're going to figure out a way to get them out of New York. I don't know. I mean,
it was your destiny.
Yeah, destiny like that. And the thing about happy monkey pictures, it's true. The one thing that I get to do as a photographer is pick the moment that I push the button, right? I mean, I'm sitting there looking through it. I hold it up to my eye the whole time. And when I see Davey turn around and laugh at somebody, I just go click, click, and I get it. And I'm just waiting for that moment. And I'm very interested in people. I really like people. I'm a people person. And so I like to watch people. I'm kind of an observer. And so it's fun to watch them. And I do wait until I think that looks great. Click. I wait until it's just the right mood or the right facial expression. So I might wait a couple of minutes watching somebody until they just do something that is like makes me push the button. So it's true. All of those pictures were the effect of me choosing that moment, that look, that expression.
I also feel like because I'm always being hollered at, put the camera down because you aren't enjoying the show.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's my duty because I feel like the photos that I'm taking, I get to share with the people that follow me. So though they can't be there, they get to see what I feel, which is really a picture taken with my heart, not taken with any experience like yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you?
Well, I think you're there when you take the picture. I mean, you're not, jumping up and down and running around. You're kind of watching, but that's the way I look at the world. I like to look at the world through a camera. I like to frame things up, and just it's kind of a little game. It's a fun. It makes me feel balanced, kind of.
No, did you? I know that you've taken photos of very important people, but who would you say is the most charismatic person you've ever filmed?
Probably Paul McCartney.
What makes you say that?
It's hard to answer who's the most charismatic.
Well, I'm going to believe you because I've never even met him.
But Paul was a Beatle, and he happens to be a very, very charming guy. I've said before, the three most gentlemen that I've met in rock and roll, the nicest people are Paul McCartney, Graham Nash, and Garth Brooks. Because all three of those guys are so real. I mean, there's nothing, they look you right in the eye. They're like right there with you. They're human. They don't, take a sort of a higher, position or anything. They're right there, very human, very person to person. All three of them. Garth, amazing guy,
I didn't even realize that you had such a relationship with him until today. I was reading that you're very close with him.
Well, I was photographing him one time. He played a concert in town, and I was working for Capitol Records, and I was the guy they would always call to shoot a video or a party or a concert, and so they wanted me to shoot this guy Garth Brooks, and I showed him a little book of pasted in photos I'd taken, and it was James Taylor and Dan Fogelberg. He said, "Henry, you took these pictures?" He said, this is the reason I'm singing and writing songs. People like James Taylor and Dan Fogelberg. And then they started calling me to go out on the road with them. So I would go travel with Garth and the band. And I'd hang out in the band's dressing room with all the boys in the band. They're all good friends of mine. And then get up on stage and photograph, night after night. Went to Ireland for a couple of weeks with them. But Garth is such a human, such a wonderful guy. If I'd walk up to him and say, "Hey, Garth," to have a question, he'd put an arm around me and say, "What can I do for you, boss?"
Did you ever get to shoot the four Beatles?
No, well, yes and no. I went to the second Shea Stadium concert that they did in '66, and I went with the Lovin' Spoonful. And so it was
okay.
Four of them and me. Then the Lovin' Spoonful had like cowboy hats. Zolyanowski had a monk's robe with a hood. They didn't want the girls to recognize them, so they put on these outfits that made them stand out even more. And so before the concert, we were sitting in the stands way over on the side, and some girl saw four guys sitting there in disguise and, said, "Oh," screamed, "the Beatles." And then pretty soon 1,000 girls were shouting and running down the stands towards where we were sitting, because it seemed like, there's four guys all disguised and, with sunglasses and hats, and maybe it's the Beatles. They were so on a hair trigger, all those little 13 and 14-year-olds, And so they were starting to run towards us, and somebody said, "Quick, jump over here down on the field. Follow me." We went through a dugout. We went through a little hallway, and he said, "In there." And we all went in this little dressing room, and there were the four Beatles.
Oh, my God.
So suddenly, just the four Beatles and the four Spoonfuls and me. I was the last one through, and whoever the guy was, the guy who worked for the Beatles, said, "No photos." It was probably Mal Evans or somebody, that I didn't know. And we spent about 15 minutes in there. I was talking to Ringo. I said, "Wow, what do you do with all those stuffed animals the girls throw up on stage?" He said, "I bring them home to me son, Zach." I remember saying that. And Paul was walking around with a bass and a harmonica in his mouth, kind of warming up. I know John Sebastian sat and had a long conversation with John Lennon. So I never met John. I really only met Ringo at that point. And then they said, "Okay, come on, time to go." And we all ran out of the dressing room onto the field. And we just followed them out to this huge stage in the middle of the baseball field, right? So, but you're looking straight up. They're like 12 feet, 15 feet above you on this huge risers. And we're right next to it, like looking up, this way. And I had my little camera, but I didn't really have a flash, and I wasn't that sophisticated, I didn't know how to take. I couldn't take pictures like that. I didn't have a telephoto. And I was too close to really get. I think I tried to take a couple, but they were blurry and they were, I wasn't prepared for something like that.
Did you ever happen to see any photos that like a fan or anybody else took that caught that moment of you running out with them?
No, I never have. I've seen pictures of them running out, but they crop it just to them, but I mean, in the years following, I photographed Ringo many times for publicity for his all-star band. 3 or 4 or 5 of those all-star bands I photographed. Paul McCartney for the cover of Life magazine, and a Ram songbook of his, and the back of the London Town, the English, London Town album. I got to spend a week in the Virgin Islands with the McCartneys and photograph them for use on this album. They made a poster out of a whole collage of the photos, like maybe 20, 30 photos that I took of them on the boats. So that was fun. And I photographed George at the Bangladesh concert at Madison Square Garden. And I met him a couple times. So I sort of knew that, but never John. He's the one guy I never really met or photographed that I wish I had. An amazing guy.
Now, I saw that you were the official photographer of Woodstock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you got that job, the pictures of you that you took of Jimi Hendrix and the people that performed there, how intimate do you get with these people to be? I mean, do they know who you are before you're taking these photos? Because it seems like there's a relationship with the photos that you've taken and the people that you're filming.
Generally there is. I mean, if I go on the road with the Eagles, for 3 weeks, I mean, I'm there every day on the plane, in the hotel, in the limos, the backstage, on stage. So of course, I'm almost part of the band. Woodstock was different. There were so many people, so many photographers, and 450 people out in the audience. And Jimi Hendrix came on really early, as dawn broke on Monday morning. And there'd been a little break before he came on, and I was taking a nap in my station wagon behind the stage, and I heard Chipmunk say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Jimi Hendrix," and I jumped up and ran up on the stage, up the back steps, and got there just as he walked out and started playing. So I was just very close, like 20 feet away from him, photographing, and he didn't even see. I didn't know him, no. Although I did meet him on the Monkees tour in '67. He opened for the Monkees for about the first week. Well, I arrived. A magazine sent me there. Tiger Beat sent me there, and I arrived the day he left. As I entered the afternoon concert at Forest Hills Stadium, Jimi Hendrix was just walking off stage. So I didn't even get to see one number of his. But that afternoon, that evening, back at the hotel, he was there we had a whole floor, a whole hallway full of rooms, and the Warwick Hotel, Gary is reminding me. And so we had the whole floor and security at the elevator so nobody could come up. So all the hotel rooms were open and everybody was just out in the hallway, schmoozing and talking. And I met Jimmy then, and I met him later on that night down at Greenwich Village. And so I'd met him, and he's met thousands of people. If he'd have turned to the side and looked at me there at Woodstock, he wouldn't have remembered me, but he didn't. He was looking out. I wasn't in his face. And the thing is, sure, I have a relationship with a lot of the people that I shoot, but as I said, I'm a kind of an observer. I'm not all kind of up there in their face. Hey, boys, look here. I'm very quiet. My Chinese animal is a tiger. We all should know our Chinese animal because it's kind of a little blueprint, just like your astrological sign. I'm a Virgo tiger. So Virgo means I kind of analyze in my head and make lists. And a tiger likes to sit up on top of the cliff and look down at all the other animals, or hide in the bushes. I mean, think about it. Tiger,
yeah, that's true.
They're kind of loners. They're kind of quiet. You're not going to hear them, until they're right.
I'm wondering, because your photos have been duplicated so many millions of times. Is it hard at this point? Like, I know that many of the photos you've taken, I would consider to be priceless, but can you get rich or make a lot of money off of those photos? Because it seems like it's the Wild West out there now, where you take a picture and people are selling it and ripping it off. And
it does happen. It happens, you know, more to some people than others. I've been pretty lucky. I mean, yeah, my pictures are all over the place, but when they're running a magazine, generally they've gotten that from either from me or from an agency. Like I was with Corbis Agency, and then I was with Getty Agency. And so I have different people who kind of license my photos for me. So I do get paid when they're used. Sure, they get duplicated. I mean, I don't really worry about that. And get rich? No, but pay the bills. I mean, it pays the bills. You know, you can pay your rent and your insurance and gasoline and food and stuff. And that's where Gary comes in a lot too, because being an archivist, he scans so many things. And I do get emails every day, somebody wanting to, like Mojo magazine in England. Oh, we're doing a story on, you know, David Crosby, Jackson Brown. Send us all you got. And then they'll run 6 or 8 pictures and pay us for those pictures. And so Gary kind of handles that part of it, sending that stuff out.
How do you like using digital versus when you would have to do them yourself?
Well, when digital came out, I said for a few years, I said, I'll never go digital. I am a film guy, you know, and I'm going to. But I don't know when digital started, around 2000, maybe earlier, but around early 2000s, I was saying, oh, no, I'm only a film guy. That's BS, you know. And then one day in 2005, I picked up a friend's camera, a Canon camera with a big telephoto lens, and I looked in and I said, oh my gosh, this focuses itself. You don't have to focus, you know, and it sets its own light reading. You don't have to. Because when I shot film, I had a spot meter. I'd have to go like this and look through the thing and push a button and then read it. And then I have to set the camera and then, you know, and then focus. But digital did all that. You just pick it up, bang. It's perfect, you know, in that way. So that was a wonderful thing. The other thing was, you said before, when you take all these pictures and you give them to the magazine, then you lose them. And that's true, you do. And that happened in the Monkees a lot for me. Luckily, years later, I worked for a graphic artist, so we'd keep all the pictures. So when you shoot digital, you email them to the person who hired you, and you keep them all at the same time. They're digital. Everyone can have a copy. I mean, like you could shoot a group, go back to your computer, put the chip in there, and make, you know, 5 discs. I mean, one for each guy in the group, one for the record company, one for the manager, one for everybody can have all the pictures, and yet I can keep them all too. That's amazing. And that made a big difference. So every digital picture I've ever taken, I have, but not every film picture.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I noticed, and again, I'm always being told, put the damn camera down, and I never do. But I saw something that was pretty interesting. I'm not sure how often you get to see what I saw. We were at the Egyptian Theater when just for the 50th anniversary of Head.
Yep.
And you had that amazing opening with all those photos from the movie that you either found or that Mickey and Mike hadn't seen maybe ever or in 50 years. And you're usually getting interviewed or you're kind of taking photos, I think. And I was normally, before Mike and Mickey do anything, you know, we're kind of talking and they're talking about what we're going to do and they're figuring their game plan out.
Right.
But not this time. I actually I wasn't even paying attention to the photos that were on the screen. I was watching Mike and Mickey watching themselves, which I could see glimpses of, Mickey's very emotional to begin with, but I could see glimpses of in their eyes and their facial reaction when they saw something that either touched them, reminded them of something. And it was surreal watching them see their life on screen, and maybe for the first time. And the importance that you have in that is just mind-blowing,
Well, that's great. I mean, I wish I'd have seen that too. That would have been fun.
I actually think I videoed it, and I'm going to send that to you because I'm not somebody that gets into their personal space when they don't expect it. But what happened was I was doing a live stream so that people at home could see what we were seeing. And then at a moment, I watched the two of them, and Nez is not really usually like that. Yeah. And the two of them just wanting their own space and watching, and their glee and their eyes just locked on. It was very surreal. And do you ever realize, like, do you get to see that, what you mean to these people? Because they're so caught up in their moment, they don't get to enjoy it many times.
Yeah. I mean, not often, just like that, really. That was a kind of a special situation, I mean, sure, probably Gary had gone through all the monkey pictures. I had thousands of them.
I scanned every frame.
He said he scanned every frame, and then he picked out a bunch of good ones, and they picked out, whoever did that looked at thousands of pictures, which the Monkees, of course, they hadn't seen them. They were in my files. They'd seen a few of them, but not that many. So yeah, that's great. I love that. I mean, that doesn't happen often. If I do a slideshow of somebody for their life, of their life, they would see that, and I could see their reaction.
It was a magic moment that. It's not something, I know when I came home, it hit me that I saw something I don't know that anybody else realized, because like you, I like to watch people, and that meant more to me than what I was seeing on the screen at that point.
Well, do you know your Chinese animal?
I think it's a rat.
Okay. Rats are very good. Rats are very successful.
Really?
The rat goes straight to what it wants. Like the rat goes straight to the food,
Oh, that I might be a rat. And I'm a Libra. So I'm artistic and I'm very well balanced, even though don't ask anybody that I know. But I'm normal, I think. So just a couple more questions I have.
First, I'm going to close the shade a little. Wait a minute.
Sure.
It's so light. Let me see. It's the TV. It's the light from the camera. Yeah.
Oh, back up a little.
I'll back up a little.
Yeah.
So
I look so kind of shiny.
You look amazing.
Powder.
When you shoot for album covers, and some of the most famous album covers of the 60s that meant something to me, I hadn't even realized you had something to do with. First of all, what are your favorite album covers you've ever shot? And do you get consulted in picking the record picture, or do you submit and then you're surprised at what comes out?
Yeah, well, okay, in the case of a record company, no, I would do and I didn't very often work for a record company. A couple times. Sweet Baby James. Peter Asher, James' manager, called me up one day. I knew Peter Asher, and he said, "Henry, could you come down here tomorrow and photograph this guy that I'm going to record, James Taylor, just over from England?" And I said, "Sure, I'll come down in the afternoon." And I spent the day. They wanted publicity photos. That meant black and white, because newspapers couldn't print color, so they black and white. So I spent the day photographing him. We went outside to somewhere, and I did portraits of him. And then I took a couple color shots just for myself so I could show them to my friends in these weekly slideshows that I would do, weekend parties where I would show pictures to my hippie friends, And So I said, I got to take a color shot because I can't project a black and white shot. And when the manager saw the color shot, I guess I showed it to him. He showed it to the record company, and that became the album cover. So in that case, Gary is bringing up.
Boy, Gary, you're good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There it is. Yeah.
Wow.
So here, this is one of my favorite album covers right here. The one we
that and the Doors, I would say are probably the most iconic. But there you go.
Yeah, both of them. Now I have to tell you something. These albums, I kind of had a special situation because I met a guy named Gary Burden, who was an architect, and he was rebuilding Mama Cass's house, and they got to be good friends. And Mama Cass said, Gary, I want you to do my first solo album cover. And he said, well, Cass, I'm an architect. I'm not a graphic artist. And she said, so you make a blueprint, you make an album cover. What's the difference? And he said, oh, okay. And right around that time, he met me. I was at a love-in in a park on Sunday afternoon, and he saw me photographing. He said, you're a photographer. You want to help me do this? And that started us off. I mean, 100 of those 200 album covers I've done, I did with Gary. Gary was the graphic artist. He was the guy. So we would go somewhere on an adventure, like we take the Eagles and go spend the night in Joshua Tree in the desert around. Is
that where you got the Desperado, where they were just like cowboys?
Yeah, that too. You know, they had a cowboy record, so Gary went and got cowboy outfits for them from a movie rental house. He knew where there was a kind of a ghost town that they used for old movies in the 20s and 30s, and we went there. And so, you know, Gary was like the scoutmaster. You know, he was like the director, and he would say, Henry, just shoot everything that happens. He would say, film is the cheapest part. And I would go, but that's what I did anyway. You know, I just kept the camera up, looking and photographing everything that happened. And Gary, I know you're hovering there with photos.
You were destined to be with another Gary in your life.
Yeah. So I was lucky. This Gary Burden had exquisite taste, you know. So he would kind of help make these situations happen where we like we'd want to get the group out of town, away from their girlfriends, away from their managers, away from their telephones. We didn't have cell phones, and we'd go somewhere. We'd drive up to Big Sur or go down to an Indian reservation or go somewhere where we could be alone with the group and make something happen, like organically. You know, we never had a set idea. In the case of the Morrison Hotel, we knew there was that hotel down there when we went down. Crosby, Stills, Nash, we were just driving around looking for places to jump out and take photos, and we found that house, you know.
With the Morrison Hotel, what I read today, I mean, maybe for a lot of people it's an old story, but I hadn't realized that you didn't actually have permission to use that to take the photos that you did. Did you ever get in trouble when this appeared on the front cover of an album?
No, I'm sure the lawyers for the record company had to go pay $500 or something. I mean, we thought big deal. We're just, a bunch of guys going down there, going to take a few pictures. And we didn't expect the guy at the desk to say, I'm sorry, no photos. You can't take any photos in here. And luckily he left the desk and went up in the elevator, and they ran in there. We took the photos when nobody saw us, Yeah.
The backstories are more interesting because, one of the things that I think is cool about you, and I might be wrong, but a lot of people these days, they want to be all glammed up. All the makeup, the fancy dresses. And I feel like you're more like the natural state of people, the real person. That if I said to you, okay, I have two options. I'm going to put all my makeup on, or I'm going to just wake up and let the day go. That you're more of be yourself instead of trying to be somebody else.
More the natural thing. Well, I'm a documentary photographer, I mean, I'm an observer, and I kind of document. I want to see real life and frame it up and take a picture of it. I want to choose the moment. I want to see people doing things, and I want to watch them, and I want to, push the button when I think it looks great, when it's framed up nice, or it feels nice, or the people look nice. That's the part of it that's fun, to look at all that happening and then capture those moments. So it's the opposite of a guy who has a studio with lights, and the band comes in and they get makeup and costumes and they stand in front of the paper, and then the guy tells them that, more like that. Move to the left. Put your hand up. Do this. I don't do that. Now let me see you guys all get together and give each other a great big hug. Now jump up in the air at the same time. I mean, I don't direct the thing. I want to see it really happen. Sometimes it's a little bit cheeky, but sometimes I think of myself as the Jane Goodall of rock and roll. Jane Goodall,
yeah,
the lady
of course.
who watched the Chimps.
Yep.
She'd sit there very quietly with a pad of paper and a pen and make notes. Now, she wouldn't want to interact at all with the Chimps, because then she wouldn't be seeing what their life was really like, right? She didn't want to influence it. So I feel the same way. I want to just sit there. I want to watch. I want to be backstage. I want to be in the dressing room. I want to be in the airport or wherever it is. And I just want to see what life is like for those people and try to document it.
You really are. I guess if there was a reality photographer, you're the reality photographer, because you don't look for staged. You look for, this is what's happening. Did you shoot any of the Monkees album covers?
Later I did. I did Pool It, which was the 3 remaining Monkees. There have been a couple of reissues. But no, at first those were done by big record companies, in the early days, the Monkees, it was all a package deal, Yeah, there's one that I took. This is,
I'm one of the 3 people that love that record. I don't know.
There we go. And then this one here is
I have that one. Oh, well, because the Rainbow Room.
And then here for Nesmith, get this. Oop, where you go? There we are. I worked on Mike Nesmith's television parts.
You did?
Yeah, for I guess probably 3 months, 4 months. I mean, every week was the way we'd be in either on a soundstage or out on the beach in Malibu shooting at night, or you never knew where. And there'd be great comedians and great singers.
When you look at the people that he had on that show before they were famous.
Exactly.
I mean,
Jerry Seinfeld and
Jay Leno, Gary, Gary
Shandling,
Jerry
Shandling,
Whoopi
Goldberg. So if in summing things up, I'm just curious, of everything, of all the important things you've ever done, what do you think if your legacy is? If to pass down, your most important thing, what do you want to be known for?
I didn't want to be known for anything. I mean, when people come up and say, "Oh, thank you for taking all those pictures," and I say, "Well, very kind of you," and then I walk away thinking, "Well, I took those for myself." I mean, I wasn't getting up every day thinking, "Okay, now what kind of a moment can I capture in time for future generations to appreciate?" No, I mean, I got up and, lit the incense, lit a joint, put Robbie Shankar on, and wait to see if the phone rings or somebody drives up. And where are we going today? We're going to Mama Cass's house. She's having a swimming pool party, and see where that goes. And then go to a club later and go to someone's house. And I just always had my camera with me. You know what I mean? It was just life. It was my daily life. And it would always be amongst these musician friends of mine. So I never thought, boy, one day I'll have a.
Do you have a greatest memory of everybody, like a greatest moment that you witnessed that you're like, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened to me?
No, not really. I mean, like even being on stage at Bangladesh and seeing Bob Dylan and George Harrison come out. I mean, I'm looking at it, I'm framing it up, I'm taking a picture, I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I love Bob Dylan. The music was great. It looked great, but I'm not thinking, wow, who would have thought that this little, kid from New York, I mean, you know, I never think of myself in context with the thing. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, that is great. I don't put myself into it, you know? I'm a tiger. I'm hiding in the bushes.
You're hiding in the bushes.
And, you know, yeah.
You, I guess because of that, you have literally made so many people who, I mean, for me, for the past 40 years, I have stared at through your eyes. Your eyes have told a story that even if you had one big song with your group, I don't think it ever would have had the power that you have over people that look for a smile in the work that you've done. And I don't know that I'd ever be able to thank you enough, because during every bad time I come and I've been looking at pictures I had no idea you took. And I mean,
well, I didn't take them all, you know.
No, you've taken a good amount of them, and it really is mind blowing. First of all, I can't even believe I actually know you. And it's funny because I know you for several years, and I mean, you're just amazing. But I was watching you and it hit me like, oh my God, like he's so important to everything. Since I'm a child, you have an important part of my life. And to know that you helped make people smile, that's a huge responsibility that you have.
Well, that's great. Well, I love your words, Jody. I love that thought. I love that idea. I don't, you know, I mean, like I say, I don't think of it in terms of that. You know, sometimes I say, if I'd have been up in Laurel Canyon as a folk musician, and then seeing people starting to write their own songs, seeing these new people have records, and if I'd have thought to myself, you know what, I should get a camera and I should document this whole scene, because then one day I will have this whole visual history of this period of time. Well, of course I never thought that. It was all just an accident. Just an accident I had a camera. But then I think, well, if somebody had to do it, I'm glad it was me. I mean, I was right there in the middle of it. Why not? You know, I'll fill that role. I'm happy that I got to do it. It wasn't planned.
Well, I've watched and listened to a lot of motivational speakers that say, if you do something you love, the money will be there. But if you do it for all the wrong reasons, it's just not possible. And I know that you got into this for the love of it, not because it wasn't strategically done. Now the Morrison Gallery, because I ordered a shirt from there today. For the one that says Los Angeles, the Morrison Gallery. How are you involved with the Morrison Gallery?
Okay, well, it's called the Morrison Hotel Gallery.
The Morrison Hotel Gallery.
Right. A couple of my in 2000, one really good friend of mine who was kind of a business partner. He said, I met this guy who sells John Lennon lithographs on the road. He goes to a different city every weekend or every month and sets up a little pop-up store and sells John Lennon lithographs for the Lennon estate. And that guy, I met him and he said, I'd love to do that with photographs. Maybe we could take Henry's photographs and tour them around. And we did that for a year. And like around 2000, we went to a different city every month. And we'd have a big, we did one in San Francisco or Palo Alto or something. And Nesmith came to it.
Yeah, I remember that. That was about a year ago.
We would do a big slideshow. And then we would have lots of prints for sale. And then we got to New York after a year of doing that, and we found a little permanent place. And we had our first little actual gallery. And we didn't have a name for it. It just said the photography of Henry Diltz. It'd be a little storefront. And when you'd walk in, it would be all my photos from the 60s and 70s. And we would have a tape playing Jackson Browne and Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills, Nash. So it was like a little cocoon of the 60s. People would walk in and say, oh, this is my whole life right here, And I loved that. And then gradually, one day, we had that Morrison Hotel album cover picture in the window. And my partner and I were standing across the street watching people walk by. And they would walk by, they'd stop, they'd take a step back and look at that picture, and then they'd walk in the store. I said, look at, wow, it's like a magnet. I said, but look at on that picture how beautiful the lettering, Morrison Hotel. And now look up at our window and we got nothing. There's nothing up there. It's blank. He said, that's a great idea. I'll call a sign painter and we'll put Morrison Hotel on our window just to get attention while that Doors photo was in the window. And then, of course, it became the name. So I'm one of the 3 owners of it. And then we added Jim Marshall and then Neil Preston and then Bob Gruen and Danny Clinch and Lynn Goldsmith and Pam Springsteen, Ethan, Norman Seeff, all the great music photographers eventually joined our gallery because we did fairly well because I was a photographer and I was one of the owners. They knew they weren't going to get cheated,
Right, they weren't going to get ripped off or anything like that.
Yeah, in the 70s, I would get calls. People say, Henry, we're going to start this website. We're going to call it Rock Photo, We're going to make $1 million. You got to join us. And I would think, no, I don't think so. Rock Photo,
Right.
And I steered away from that. But there were a bunch of, opportunists kind of and hype artists, But we were a gallery that I was one of the owners, so they know they weren't going to get ripped off. And when we pay the photographer half the amount we sell the picture for, they get a check right away. They don't have to wait 90 days, And so it was a good deal. And so now we have 125 photographers. And if you go to morrisonhotelgallery.com, you can look up any group, any artist, and see all the pictures that our photographers have taken. Or you can go to any photographer and see their whole life in photos. And you can buy them on there, different sizes. But it's fun to just go and look at your favorite artists on there.
So when all of this blows over, is the Morrison Hotel Gallery something, because I would love to include this when we go out there, to make this part of our trip, so that people from all over the world who didn't even realize that you had a brick and mortar gallery, that we could go there and maybe have you there and sign some autographs, buy some stuff. And that would be such.
Yeah, we have 3. One is in New York in Soho. One is in LA at the Sunset Marquis Hotel in Hollywood. And the other one is in Maui at McFleetwood's Club in Maui. So we have 3 actual standing galleries. And then we do a lot of business on the web. People order pictures and we ship them, framed or unframed or any way they want them. We ship them all over the world.
What do you think's the most popular photo of all of your photos that you sell?
Wow. Well, certain artists sell a lot, like Neil Young, Jimi Hendrix, the Stones, the Beatles. You could think of the top 10, 15.
I didn't realize you had shot Michael Jackson. I was really surprised. And then I just recently saw you with Miley Cyrus.
She came to our hotel. We had a big 50-year anniversary of the Doors, and the Morrison Hotel, album cover. So we had a big party, and a couple of the Doors were there playing, and Miley Cyrus sang, and Gary Clark Jr. sang, and a bunch of people sang. You're
cool. Such a rock star. I was so happy for you. Is there anybody on your bucket list that you would like to still be able to shoot?
John Lennon.
No, right. Try again. Maybe one with a heartbeat right now.
I don't know. Taylor Swift. No, I don't know. No, I'm happy with whatever happens. I'm meeting enough people, and I've reached a point. You know what? When I photographed a lot in the 60s and 70s, those people weren't really well known. I wasn't shooting real famous people. They became famous. Crosby, Stills, Nash. They didn't even have an album out. Nobody knew. No one ever heard of that name when I was shooting them. Now, of course, they're huge, but most of the bulk of those pictures were taken back then. Now, when I take pictures, it's somebody who says, oh, hey, we've got this little group and we need a picture, or we got our first album. And I shoot millennials, people that are just starting out in the business. I like that. I like to shoot real people. I don't want to, the Rolling Stones want you to come and do their album cover. Oh, man, I wouldn't know what to do, I'd like to, just meet somebody that I don't really know and say, look, I'll come over to your house and we'll hang out and drink a cup of coffee and take some photos. And you always get into something and you get, it's organic to me. It's got to be like people, really. You know what I mean?
That's just amazing. No, you're the one thing I want to make sure of, because I subscribed today to the Morrison Hotel Gallery, which I'm going to share that with everybody.
Good.
The store, though the physical location is closed, obviously, the online store, if people wanted to go while they're redecorating during this pandemic, they can go and order the prints that you have available, right?
Yeah.
How many times did you shoot the cover of Rolling Stone, do you think?
Oh, well, not a lot. 2. One, Truman Capote and
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. But I've had a lot of other covers. I had Jim Morrison on the cover of High Times. Paul and Linda McCartney on Life magazine cover. And I've been on Cashbox and the music magazines, Mojo magazine. I don't know. They just have what's Mojo or Classic Rock English. They are great English music magazines, and I've been on there a lot of times. They do retro stories, and they just had one with the cover of the Morrison Hotel on it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You are just you are a legend, and I don't want to keep you any longer, but you really are just absolutely amazing. Do you
with visual aids here? You want it? There it is. Classic Rock magazine, The Doors. There we go. All right.
I can't believe that I know somebody that was there, like in that moment. That just is mind blowing.
Well, you know what? When people say, "Oh, you're so famous," and I say, it's not. It's the people that I photograph that are famous. I mean, I'm glad that this lifetime I had this assignment. But really, I think maybe something in me, like a little boy who wanted to climb under the circus tent, and actually be right there with the performers and be a part of it and observe it and see it. I kind of remember that feeling as a little kid. I always wanted to get close and see what was going on, And so I think that's part of what made me do what I did. It's almost unconsciously. I mean, it seems like a big accident to me, and also it's just a way of life. I love to look through that lens and frame up things. Makes me feel good, so I keep doing it.
And you have books that are available. The book, and you're in that new documentary that comes out on May 31st.
May 31st
another one about Laurel Canyon.
May 31st and June 7th.
Because it's a 2-part one, right?
2 parts, Sunday night, yeah. And it's on Epix, EPIX channel.
I'm going to make sure that everybody subscribes to the Morrison Hotel Gallery and that they see the books, because I couldn't believe this last book that you published is just gorgeous. The photos are amazing. Made me want to get a coffee table.
Coffee table book?
Yeah, I wanted to get a coffee table so I could put the book
so
on
you put
something.
the book on. Yeah. I've done a couple of big books, and right now I have a black and white book out. I'm doing a color book. Hopefully by Christmas we'll have the black and white reprinted and the color book out. And then there'll be other books coming out. I hope to do a bunch of books. You're
not planning on retiring anytime soon, right?
No. What retiring? What does that mean?
Well, let me ask you a question, and then I'm going to let you get back to your real life. Do you think I ordered the wrong lens?
Oh my gosh! Look at that thing! Wow.
When I
is that a 300 millimeter or something?
I don't know. I wanted to shoot really close pictures when I shoot the Monkees, and I feel like I should be, filming the moon instead of a concert.
When it's that big, it's very hard to get into the concert. They'll say, you can bring your iPhone or a little camera. You can't bring a camera that changes lenses unless you have a photo pass. Then you have to go to the PR people and get a photo pass.
I used to shove the camera down my pants as a kid. I mean, we all did.
Sure.
Can you imagine? That would never, ever work.
You'd have to dress like a fella.
That's like Spinal Tap.
Oh, that's great.
I love you so much. I love you guys.
Hey,
yeah, great talking to you. There's Gary back there. See him?
Hey, Henry,
can I tell a quick Gary story before you go? Gary was at the Hollywood show when Davey called me, and it was right before Davey passed away. And I had told the story to Gary, and Gary actually had been with the little GoPro filming at that moment, not knowing me, not knowing who Davey was on the phone with. He could have been calling for his lunch. And he got that moment from Davey talking to me that this is why you guys maybe don't realize how much you impact a person's life, because here it was the only conversation and the last one. And I have something that is irreplaceable.
That's great. Yeah, Gary does that. He videotapes a lot of good stuff. Now he wants to
Jody, I just want to show you. This is changes. It's going to be the 50th anniversary. Henry didn't shoot the cover, but he shot all the photos in the back.
Yeah, we gotta hold it here.
That's
God, it's hard to get. Everything's backward in this camera.
I see everything exactly perfect, and you just will never realize how much you mean to all of us. I mean, both of you guys. It's not anything that is it can't be reproduced. It's a one shot when you take that photo or video, and you mean a lot to so many people. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Hey, Jody.
Thank you, Jody. He wants to show you something.
Henry said I needed to wear a mask in order to be in this, so I'm just going to put it on right now.
There he is. Yeah.
You're just as handsome. And I'm wearing a mask of you when I go out now.
Okay. We love
Guys,
you,
thank you for hanging out with me.
Jody, have another monkey convention in New Jersey sometime, will you?
You know, you're kind of a troublemaker right now.
Okay.
It is absolutely what I would love to be able to do. We have to do something.
Do it in LA, maybe, after they're done touring or something, or before.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the tour takes off the way it should, but.
Right. Well, we don't know that,
Yeah.
Daily thing, we just get up each day and be ourselves and wait and see what happens,
Though a lot of people are upset with the way that life is at the moment, as I was telling you the other day, I'm trying to flip the attitude and say that, boy, you know what? I have a lot of time right now to appreciate what I already have and not what I can get.
That's right.
It's been making me think, and I hope everybody's taking this time to spend thinking about how lucky they've been up until this point.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys soon. As soon as this is over, I'm going out there.
Okay.
Thank you. I love you guys. Just be safe, and I'm going to make sure everybody goes over to the hotel. I really thought I was booking a hotel room at the. I'm glad that I clarified that one.
Okay. Well, great, Jody. Wonderful talking to you.
I love you. I miss you both so much. Bye, guys. Be safe. Take care. Bye. So there's the genius, Henry Diltz and Gary Strobel. And I hope that you understand why they are so important. They literally Henry's captured everything that we've looked at some point. And I really think that when you look at pictures, because how many of us read those magazines, we actually are looking at the photos, and the whoever photographed it, that's their story. And I'm learning that as a not professional photographer, but I'm learning that some of the moments you really can't ever get again, especially when it's family and it's the last time. So I really appreciate you hanging out with us. I was really excited about tonight. I really was. And I'm lucky that I know them, and we're lucky that we have them. So anyway, I will see you guys on Monday night. I'm just kind of figuring out what I'm doing with this whole thing, socially distancing, but I've just met so many fascinating people that I like to share with you some of the stories that you may not realize. So that was our story for tonight. And have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay indoors. Don't cough on anybody. And make sure that if you order pizza, that it is contactless. Unlike when they played Frisbees with it. And check out Henry's Morrison Hotel Gallery. And you can buy, I just got a really cool shirt on there. And make sure you check it all out. Thank you so much for hanging out. Bye, you guys.